think, amazing to actually get anything shipped at all. I had several companies we didn't even ship. So I'm really excited we actually built something that was encrypted and ephemeral and worked. And some pretty cool security experts were, saying great things. Here you see Jonathan Zidorowski on Twitter saying that Glimpse was one of the App Store's best kept secrets, that the secure photo messaging was so easy that you didn't realize it was secure. And we had 5 stars. So that's me. I'm starting off with the assumption that you want your product to be usable and friendly. So we're going to take that as a start. And if not because you actually like and care about your users, then because you care about usage metrics. Users equal money. More users, happier users equals more money. So if you don't instinctively, natively want to make things simple and easy, you probably want the end goals of what happens when you do make it easy. You can be grouchy and like complex things, but your users, they have needs. They have needs for simplicity. You've got that classic dog, I have no idea what I'm doing. That's your users. Regardless of whatever product you make, some of your users are in that category. And especially as security becomes more of a mainstream concern. With the Sony hack, iCloud hack, we're seeing security coming up in the papers and the news all the time. The market for security is really opening up to the point where mainstream users and enterprises are looking at, purchasing and using solutions. So we're going to discover we have a whole new user base that looks a lot more like, the dog at the laptop than the people who are coming to ShmooCon. So if you want those users, this is what we need to do. The first step is to build and test the design first. This may seem really obvious, right? Like, of course you're going to design it first. But I've been part of numerous software projects where we just got excited and started building the back end. There was a little more clarity around what we wanted the back end to do. Maybe the back end engineers were ready first. Maybe they just got so excited and started coding one night, and next thing we knew, half the back end was done. But there's so many problems with this. The first is it's easier to make changes to your app before the back end is built. And once you actually have a design, you start testing it, you discover that the feature set needs improvement. And it's really hard to make changes to the app once the back end is built, because now you have to throw away all of this code. It's a lot easier to design a beautiful app when you do the design first, show it to users, show it to your target demographic, show it to the kinds of people who will be using the app, get their feedback, make changes and iterate when it's just pieces of paper or Xcode without any data in it. It's a lot harder to make changes to an app once all the stakeholders have put a lot of time and effort and energy into writing the code. An example I think of a lot is Instagram. Instagram is not a security app, but they have been very successful with millions of users. So they're a great example of an app that managed to capture a wide demographic. They were originally a photo and a check-in app called Bourbon. And they had a ton of features. They had too many, and it was confusing. And people didn't like Bourbon. They only liked one feature of Bourbon, which was the photo sharing and the various photo features. Instagram became successful only after features were cut. People often think that Instagram was like a fluke success, but they actually were extremely methodical in getting from this kind of overdone, clunky app to getting to Instagram, which was simple and easy and beloved. Be reasonable. Build for your threat model. This is in some ways the most controversial thing that I have to say. When I speak to security people, especially people who've been in the field a long time and are established and doing brilliant and important work, there are often concerns that I'm not building things that are secure enough. And they warn me about the problems that I'll encounter by designing things the way that I design them. But you have to build for your threat model. So made for spies is awesome if your users are spies. But if they're, say, Sony executives, then we need to account for them being less motivated than your average spy. We have to deal with, the fact that they have alternatives and that their lives aren't at risk. So they're going to use things that are easy if the secure options are too hard, and then we have no security at all. Here's one example. I've shared a private message. This is me, direct messaging one of my investors, saying something fairly private. I circled it. I'm in New York City right now. I just keep that private. But I'm messaging it to him on Facebook. And the reason is because Facebook is easy and we don't have a lot of oversight. So sorry, I turned my phone off, but apparently the alarm is still going. So what will happen in corporations and with users is they'll choose to use whatever is easy if the secure solutions feel too hard to meet their needs. So it's important that we keep their threat model in mind. What we did with Glimpse that was really innovative is we only encrypted the message, not the social graph, and that actually made the app a lot faster. So you look at like Silent Circle and Wicker, and they are more secure because their encryption is more significant. They're encrypting more metadata. But the thing is, it's not a secret that I have communications that I send to my investors or to my co-founders. The only thing that needed to be protected was the content of the messages. The social graph really is public anyway. And so with Glimpse, we built just for the threat model of having messages exposed.
The metadata is message.
Well, that's why this is a controversial thing, but there are people who need only the messages to be deleted. You look at like the Tinder scandal. It wasn't a secret that the co-founders were messaging each other. It was a secret that they were having like sexy time messages. So, if you need to think about what the threat model is for the specific users. There's a use case in between the most secure apps and Facebook, and that's a really interesting space to build for in terms of usability. Test and iterate with normal people, assuming that some of them will be in your target demographic. Even if they're not, Apple originally was doing testing with school children, figuring that if school children could use the tools and the apps, then even grown-ups could do it too. If you don't have normal friends and family, then go borrow some normals from bars and coffee shops. They're out there and they're friendly, especially at the bars. Drunk users are the lowest common denominator. They're very honest and kind of chatty, perfect for user testing. Plus, your users drink. So this is a real use case. It's true, like sometimes your users are going to be drunk and trying to use your stuff. So it's actually worthwhile and useful to test with drunk people and make sure that they're not going to run into edge cases that actually aren't edge cases. Really, user testing at bars is awesome. Also, coffee shops. People are approachable at bars and coffee shops. It's free and it's cheap. You just go up and show them what you're doing and then kind of take a step back and watch them. Sometimes when people are doing user testing, they kind of hover and they're watching the users too much. You just want to take a step back and see if they can figure it out for themselves without any hand-holding. That's important. The bar test, as defined by Instagram's founders, is figure out how you would pitch your app or product to a stranger in a bar in 20 seconds. And if it's too complicated, then rethink the simplicity. If you don't have any normal people in your company or in your life, and I can kind of relate to that, and you don't want all your user testing to be done by developers, and you are shy and introverted and don't want to go to bars and coffee shops, or maybe you just want this to scale more. You want to do user testing with, say, 1 million people. Then you can pay for it. There are sites like usertesting.com, and they do a really good job of outsourcing that user testing, getting your product in front of a lot of people. And similar to Google AdWords, you can specify your target demographic, who you want to reach. So we've got 15 minutes for Q&A if people want to talk about the issues in building things that are For example, exposing metadata. I'm happy to talk about that. Anyone with questions? Yes?
Where's the source code for Glimpse and why is it for sign up through Facebook?
We were... So where's the source code for Glimpse and why is the sign up through Facebook? So we just engaged a lawyer this week to open source the code. So we'll be completely open sourcing the Glimpse code. Yeah, so excited about that. That's really important. It's important that you can see it and compile it. And for a while, we were experimenting with not being a security app, but instead being an app for teenagers. This is because sorority girls and high school teenagers just loved what we were doing so much. And we thought, well, this is where our traction is, and it's still like an interesting use case. Like teens have privacy needs too. So we were integrating Facebook because at that time we were basically like not being a security app. But I realized that even though we have traction and it's a good market, it's not where my heart is, and you shouldn't build things that you don't totally love. I really want to build things that are actually secure and do that. So we're going to be taking down the Glimpse sign-up page and bringing in security testimonials and open sourcing and following best practices. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you plan to monetize it or support your operations if not to make money?
Oh, I'm all for making money. I love making money. I dropped out of business school, and we've already made about $3,000 in revenue from users, which is great, just like people who supported what we were doing. We're looking at doing enterprise stuff, like group messaging for enterprise, secure group messaging, which is fairly well known to be a lucrative market. You look at, you know, Meetup and Google Groups, and of course all the apps specifically targeting enterprise, and there's a lot of money there. And in light of the Sony hack, I think it's really, really interesting to look at how you can do a communications replacement for executives, which is where making things easy to use comes in. With a lot of these corporations, if it's not easy enough to use, it just won't get done. You know, the CSOs, the chief security officers, don't have the authority that they need to have. They're not necessarily able to dictate that encryption is being used. They don't have control over the messages being sent by the board members. So it feels really imperative to design something that is easy enough to use that people who only halfway care about security will still do it. Otherwise, we're going to see a kind of collapse in the economy where, you know, nothing's secure. We need to get past that. Anyone else? How often do we iterate our UI? So with Glimpse, when we had the full team going, and we're doing a bit of a restructuring now, so things are a bit different, we were launching new code once a month. So some of that was making UI changes, and some of that was just building in the feature set over time. So we launched with this minimum viable product, like the smallest thing we could launch with that we felt was useful. And then every month we would do a new code push, and often we were adding in features that felt like they were essential. Like we'd maybe released a little too early, but that's okay because we got really helpful feedback. We originally had a screenshot protector that really did protect your photos from screenshots. We had an animation layer that ran on top of the photo. So if you took a screenshot, you would get like bars or some other image clouding the photo. And we thought this was so cool, and we were sending all these secret messages, but we were the only ones who thought it was cool. Because you need to really want to send a secret message in order to deal with the fuzziness of the resulting photos. It was great that we launched that really early because we put a lot of our eggs in that basket and people didn't like it. So it was really good we figured that out soon. Anything else? I have 10 more minutes.
How many iterations, how long was it before you get your UI settled and started on the back end?
Oh, that's a really great question. Yeah, so the question is how many iterations did we do in the UI before it was settled and we started on the back end? You know, I think it depends in general. You know when you found something that users like. In our case, we did maybe 2 or 3 iterations. We hired the original designer from Guitar Hero, and our original designs were just so good. And then we did a beta test with about 20 folks in New York, and they loved it. And we were showing it to everyone we knew all along the way. And really, the UI was fine. The issues we had at Glimpse is we weren't really targeting any particular market. We just kind of built this thing and put it out there. Like we were a little bit of a security product, but we weren't open sourced and we didn't have testimonials and we never marketed ourselves as a security product. But then we weren't really quite right for teenagers and young people either. But because we weren't willing to say we were secure until we'd done all the right work and we had all the testimonials and we were open source and we'd done pen testing, like that was the real problem we had with Glimpse, is we were like out there but we didn't know, you know, who we were serving. Which is fine, it took us some time, but we figured that out. And we were able to figure that out because we were out there in the market. I think the one thing that I've never done that I wish I had would be just taking pieces of paper and putting that in front of users and seeing what they think. In the past, I have done that with PDFs, where I've gotten designs and then gone and shown that to the target demographic, actually in bars. I do this bar testing thing. I will totally go and find like happy drunk people and show them my work and see what they have to say. And I get really good feedback that way. I built a lot of online dating stuff by talking to drunk girls in the bathroom at like tech events. I was really trying to solve online dating. I was like, how do I figure this out? And I had this tremendous advantage because a lot of the people building an online dating were men, and they could not do what I do, which was going into these clubs and talking to these women like after they've had a few drinks, and they don't know I've been in the bathroom for 2 hours, right? I look like I'm in the bathroom like they are, washing my hands. And I was like, what do you need to see online dating better? And this one woman was like, no secret douchebags. And I was like, I don't know how to fix that for you, but I thought about it for a long time. And it was the kind of feedback that I was only able to get because she was being really honest, and you know, it wasn't an overly formalized setting. So I actually, some of my best work has come out of talking to people when they're relaxed and opening up and willing to like really tell you what they want to see you build. And sometimes those answers are hard, right? Like, how do I fix secret douchebags in online dating? But like, that is the problem that girls face. And there are solutions, they're complicated and they're hard to build, but it at least helped me really understand the shape of that problem. Anything else? We've got about 7 minutes.
Can you talk a little bit about the...
2 more questions. I'm told 2 more questions. One question. Okay, 1 question.
Can you talk a little more about the problems with the encrypted metadata and why you decided to drop that?
Yes, I'm glad that you asked that. Can I talk a bit more about the problems with the encrypted metadata and why I decided to drop that? So first of all, I fully understand and recognize that metadata is really important information, right? Like, obviously, metadata is information, it's important. I'm not here to say that it's not. But there are lots of sets of information that people are willing to make public, right? Like, I post things on Facebook, I post things on Twitter, sometimes I post my location. Lots of my social graph and social information is welcome to be public. And so there's a use case where you're not interested in hiding some of your metadata, not if it has a cost. Now, the cost that happens when you encrypt metadata is you're adding just another layer of encryption to the app, and it does make things a little bit slower. When you build an app and you only look at the things that need to be secured, it gives you a little more room to play with usability. You admittedly absolutely end up with a less secure product, right? You absolutely end up with a less secure product. But the problem is that some of the most secure products aren't usable enough, or they're slow. It takes time while the message is being encrypted. Like, I love using Wicker, but it's a little bit slow to send the messages, and so I won't use it for certain use cases. Instead, there I am on Facebook DM, which is plenty fast. And so what's interesting to me is to try and find a way to build something that secures the things that are deeply problematic, right? Like message content being exposed from executives, like that is a deeply problematic thing. People need to be able to speak amongst themselves in the board of directors room and keep that confidential. And if the apps that they want to use feel hard for them to use, then they're just going to use like Facebook for Enterprise, which just came out. So that's the challenge. The challenge is that a lot of users don't want to use security products in the first place at all. We see that. So the challenge is how to create a set of products that builds in more security, is honest and transparent about what it does and doesn't secure, and that people will actually use and adopt and will raise the total level of security in these organizations. Yeah, it's 3:55. Thank you.